Welcome to The Brass Junkies, a podcast from the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network featuring interviews with the world's greatest brass players by two thoroughly average ones, Lance LaDuke and myself, Andrew Hitz. Today's episode features Dan Gosling of Chopsaver. He tells us all about his journey from professional trumpet player to creator of a product originally intended just for brass players that is now carried in over 7,000 CVS pharmacies. He also talks about how losing an orchestral audition to Thomas Houchin inspired him to become a mad scientist in his kitchen, which led to the creation of Chopsaver. He tells us all about it next. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of The Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my fellow host, Lance LaDuke. How are you doing this morning, Lance?
I'm feeling extra fluffy.
That's
Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. So it's always good to confuse the guest before we hit 30-second mark. Also would like to thank our producers, Buddy Deschler and Austin Boyer of Fred Brass. They are unable to join us on the call today. Lance, I think you know where they are.
This is my fault. I screwed it up a little bit. I was kind of playing with them. I told them that I wanted them to go get me 24 donut holes. And they came back with those little munchkin things like from, Dunkin' Donuts. And I was like, no, I mean the actual holes of the donuts. I need 24 of those. And they can be any flavor or whatever. And so it's really confused the two of them. I sent them in opposite directions and blamed the other. So they're off looking for the actual holes of donuts so that they can bring them to me.
Might take a while.
Yeah.
I'm counting on it. They're trumpet players, so it could be we may never see them again.
It could take forever.
I think our audience is trying to figure out how we can all bill Lance for 15 seconds of our
Okay,
lives.
how about this?
Yeah.
So here, I'll give you another reason that they're not here.
Good.
So they actually, the first time they came back was with actual donuts, and I said, that's sort of akin to like a mouthpiece rim size, so why don't you guys try buzzing on these things? And so I think, the problem was Austin actually chose a cruller instead of a donut. And Buddy, he had one of those cream-filled things. But we should just keep going. It doesn't. You asked.
Yeah. That was better than the first one. So we'll go with that. So all right. We would edit out the first part, but both, as I think I've shared on the podcast, Lance actually influenced me when I was young in Boston Brass, and I was on the mic, and I would trip up on my words, or I'd tell a joke that the audience didn't laugh at. I would get really uncomfortable and and try and fix it. And I learned from Lance that actually that's the best part, that it makes me feel alive when an audience starts to turn on me, like I was making too much fun of Jeff or something, and then they would kind of start to side with him, and then I would just double down and just see if I could get them to fully turn on me. So we keep all the awkward stuff in the podcast. So, all right, very quickly, if you could do us a huge favor and go to iTunes and leave a rating, and if you could leave a comment, a number of you have already done this. This makes it a lot easier for other people to find the incredibly high art, otherwise known as the Brass Junkies podcast. So we would really appreciate your help, and if not, we're just really happy that you're listening. So, without further ado, our guest for today's podcast is the guy behind Chopsaver and a professional trumpet player whose name is Dan Gosling. How are you, Dan?
I'm fantastic, guys. How are you guys?
We're doing really, really well.
I told you, extra fluffy.
Yeah,
extra fluffy, I believe was the word. Yes.
Yeah, actually, Lance did already share that with us. So, so you live in Indianapolis, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do there?
Well, I came to Indianapolis in 1985. I grew up in Elkhart, Indiana, a couple hours north of here. Most people will still know it as used to be known as the band instrument capital of the world.
Right.
Back in the day, pretty much every band instrument was made there. That has changed quite a bit in recent decades, but there are still a few manufacturers based in Elkhart. It's pretty interesting place to grow up as a young trumpet player. I had a great band director, great mentor, who was also my private instructor. I knew I was going to be, or wanted to be, a professional musician since I was 10 or 12 years old. Sad to say, but that was pretty much once I started realizing, hey, I'm kind of good at this. I had a really good teacher. Thought, this is what I'm going to do. Did my undergraduate at the University of Illinois. Studied with some great people like David Hickman, Ray Sasaki, Michael Tunnell, God rest his soul. Some other great mentors came through at that time. Interesting school to attend. David actually left to go to Arizona State when I was still in school there. So there were some adjunct professors that Craig Erickson comes to mind, who played in the Omaha Symphony. Guys you might not have heard of, but were really great teachers. So it was an interesting mix of mentors at that time. But then I went to Northwestern University to kind of, at the time, Vince Chikowitz was still teaching, had an incredible track record of placing people or preparing people for symphonic careers. And so that's what I wanted to do. So I was fortunate enough to get into his studio. Northwestern, I believe it may still be the case, but at the time it was only a one-year master's program. So I was there for a year. Terrific, fantastic time, obviously, with Mr. Chikowitz. But I didn't really put down roots in Chicago. A lot of competition in Chicago, great brass tradition, a lot of great players there. And actually in the mid-'80s, Indianapolis was kind of going through a little renaissance, if you will. It was growing. It was culturally growing, economically growing. I had some family members that had relocated to Indianapolis, so I said, well, I bet I could work quicker, sooner in a town like Indianapolis than try to compete in Chicago. So that's what I did. Started playing a lot with Indianapolis Symphony. There was a new orchestra being formed at the time, which was fortunate for me. I was able to move into a situation where I wasn't necessarily going to step on toes. In fact, actually, people were very welcoming, which was pretty cool for a young musician to have people welcoming you into a market, into a scene, and start working at some of the highest level gigs that were available, which was the ISO. Like I said, this new orchestra was being formed, the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. There's some recording work that happens in Indy. There's all brass quintets, church engagements, all the usual things that you find in a city of any size. But I would also go. We would. And I don't mean to disparage any one particular city, but at the time, every little community around Indianapolis also had a professional orchestra, which would play on a part-time basis. And they're often, the musicians came from universities, Butler University, Ball State University, Indiana State. So you'd have really good players. They would supplement the orchestras with string players from IU and some of the other universities. But these were orchestras like Muncie Symphony and Anderson University, Anderson Symphony, Marion Philharmonic. We would fondly refer to it as the garbage orchestra circuit, but it was a way to learn repertoire and build relationships. I formed a couple of brass quintets out of those kinds of relationships. But I was also fortunate enough to get on the sub-list for orchestras like the Cincinnati Symphony and the Louisville Orchestra. And did some adjunct teaching at Ball State University and Butler University, and was a happy little camper for about 20 years, doing all those kinds of things that people piece together to create a musical career. My wife's a violinist, and she essentially does the same thing, often the same gigs, just on a different instrument. And that's how we met. So the Chopsaver thing was really quite by accident. So I can talk more about the freelance thing, or I can kind of...
I have one question about the freelance thing. I have students at Carnegie Mellon and Duquesne that they're looking at, well, the question comes up frequently. How do I start? I moved to Indianapolis, and then what's the first thing that how do you crack into that market? How do you meet people? How do you start to network? What are the actual action steps?
Yeah.
So what did you do to make that happen?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, a student has to have a pretty clear and accurate self-assessment of, are they good enough? Can they do the work?
Amen.
They can't think, oh, well, I was pretty good in college. I'll just suddenly magically get better, or it'll get easier. I mean, all those good players in college, it'll be easier when I get out in the real world. No, there's good players from schools you never heard of. One of the finest trumpet players I know is a guy named, we'll shout out to Alan Miller. Can play anything. Chops for days. He plays everything in Indianapolis. He goes on the road a little bit. He's been around for years. No one's really heard of this guy. But he has a nice little career here, and he can play anything. And I believe he went to Indiana State University. I mean, he's the first to tell you. I didn't go to a named school per se, but he had great teaching and worked really, really hard. I mean, worked really hard. Combination of things and he's got a great little career. That's the kind of person that you're going to run into anywhere you go. It's not all about the Juilliard grads, and I was fortunate to go to good schools, but it wasn't all about the good schools. Once you get out there, there's people that went to, places like George Mason. I mean, come on. I mean,
never heard of it.
Never heard of it. But yeah, that would be the first thing. They have to be really honest about, and hopefully their instructors have been very honest about what they're capable of doing. But assuming they have the ability, good just person skills. Just get along with people. Not out there to prove you're the best. You're not out there to take people's jobs. You're out there to enhance other people's already existing musical experiences. And there's going to come a time when they're going to need you. You're going to get a call at the last minute. It's the classic story. And if you are ready and you're prepared and you show up and you're pleasant and you listen and you play in tune, and if you play in tune, and if you play in tune, and if you play in tune, oh, by the way, play in tune. I made my career at being like section guy. I did a lot of principal playing. I was principal trumpet of the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra, and those occasions would come along. But I really quickly realized that my real role, the reason I worked a lot in a lot of different cities, was because I made the other guys sound good. I didn't have an ego about. And again, I was fortunate to play with Phil Collins, who was fantastic principal trumpet of the Cincinnati Symphony, or Marvin Perry here in Indianapolis. It was easy to play with them. But if they were having a bad day, or if somebody else was there that I didn't know, I didn't try to swoop in and save the day. I just tried to make sure that everything worked as well as I could make it work, from second trumpet or third trumpet or playing the offstage part or whatever have you. So that's crucial. That's so crucial. But actually, what to do is to just, and it's probably easier now with social media and Facebook and things like that, but just get to know that person. Get to know the principal player. Call him or her. Send them an email. If they happen to have a university affiliation, you can send an email to their studio email address and say, hey, I'm in town. I'd love to get some lessons. That's how it worked in Indy. That's how it worked in Cincinnati. I just kind of went straight to the top. Who was doing the playing? Who would influence the personnel manager? It was usually the guys in the section would say, hey, there's this new guy in town. When we've got a chance, we should give him a call.
That's great advice. That's really like a systematic. They just don't know where to start. That's perfect. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, it comes down to, get a lesson. Just get a lesson. Go in kind of I'd like to learn from you. What do you hear in my playing? And I remember after a couple of lessons, like with Phil Collins, he said, I think if you would join the Cincinnati local, I bet we would start calling you. So that's what I did.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, so fast forward now, you said you freelanced for about 20 years. Is that about, I'm fascinated to learn the whole story of how the Chopsaver thing came about. So was it around that time, or I don't know if you're sick of telling this story, but I haven't heard it.
We don't care if you're sick of it. Spit it out.
No, and if I were sick of it, that would be a real problem, because the story is an essential part of the product. And no, I don't mind telling it. And it's because it's a fascinating story, even if I say so myself. So I had worked my way up the ladder, so to speak, to the point where I was playing a lot with the ISO, the Indianapolis Symphony. Um, and in I believe it was 98, they had Paul Hilgeman, a longtime third trumpet player, retired, but they did not have a music director in place because Raymond Lepard had also retired. And as you and most of your listeners probably know, that you can't hire or fire musicians in a major symphony orchestra without the boss on the podium. So they said, "Hey, Dan, would you do this for a year? Would you take a 1-year position as third trumpet?" And I said, "Well, I think, sure, of course I will do that." I didn't take but 2 seconds to realize, hey, I'll have a paid vacation and a salary and some benefits for the first time in my life. And this was a great news, of course, for my wife, too. So I thought, okay, 1 year, that'd be sure. And I knew they were going to have an audition. They have to have an audition for the position. And thought, well, that'll be down the road. I'll just enjoy this 1-year appointment. And it was great. So I did that for a year. Well, 1 year turned into 3. I had 3 1-year contracts back to back to back, which was great. Played some great repertoire. Loved the kind of the regular routine of knowing what my next job was going to be, because the whole season was planned out, and that was kind of a revelation to see how that, the people that do have full-time symphony orchestra jobs, what that's like. I could also see how it does turn into a job job, and you have to really, really work on not getting burned out or jaded or bored. But I certainly wasn't, because I knew I was still not fully in the orchestra. These were 1-year contracts. Mm-hmm. Finally, up to the end of the 3rd year, they decided to finally hold the audition. They had hired a new music director, finally had the third trumpet audition. They kind of changed the game a little bit, because I was playing a lot of section again, which was perfect for me. Third and second. Some principal would need it, but not very often. The job description turned out to be third assistant principal. They were going to do the more traditional, the third player move up when the principal player was gone. So the stakes had been rose, whatever, a little bit. But yes. But I obviously I thought, well, I'd be foolish not to at least give this a shot. Now keep in mind, I was in my early 40s. I had probably not taken a major symphony orchestra audition in probably over 10 years. And again, as you would understand, and your listeners would probably realize, that auditioning and playing in an orchestra are 2 different things. Yep. More often than not, the person that can play a good audition usually ends up being a good colleague and a good orchestral player, but not always. And it goes both ways. We know people that were great in the situation but just don't audition well. We know people that are great auditioners, but once they get in the job, they've got some social skills that, make it tough. Mm-hmm. So
that's a polite way to put it. That's a
really nice,
very Midwestern way to put that.
You must still be freelancing in Indianapolis.
A little bit.
Some of my colleagues have more social skills than others.
Exactly. But so the audition, the date gets set. I take it very seriously, obviously. I started studying again. At this time, I was going up to Chicago to study some with Charlie Geyer, who he and, of course, Barbara Butler had taken Mr. Chicklets' place at Northwestern with, an incredible track record, again, of training people. And I thought, I need some training. I need to kind of get back into the audition mode. So I had some great sessions with Charlie. Some of your listeners may know the performance coach, Don Green, consulting with him. I mean, I was going to do everything I could to try to get myself back in audition mode and win this job outright, my dream job. Well, obviously, we're sitting here talking about Chopsaver, so I didn't happen.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler. You maybe have heard of him. There's a trumpet player out there, what's his name, Tom Houchin.
Yep.
Who happened to show up at the audition.
Yeah, you'll have that.
Yeah, you'll have those days. The ISO was very kind. They advanced me to the final round. They figured I had at least earned that. I gave it my best shot, played pretty well, but there was Tom Houchin, Mr. I never lose an audition that I ever take Tom Houchin. And he's an incredible story too. Actually, there's on my website, on my YouTube channel, I did an interview, a 4-part interview with Tom Houchin. I would encourage anyone to listen to it because here's a guy who, and I'll get to my story, but Tom had major embouchure issues as a grad student. And he is now one of the great trumpet players in the world.
He's the principal trumpet of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, for anyone who might not know.
Right. He was, when he won the ISO job, he'd been in the Marine Band for 4 years. He won the ISO position, beating me out and a couple other very fine players. And then was only there for 2 years. He was principal trumpet of the Atlanta Symphony. He won also a position with Houston that he turned down. Then he won the LA Philharmonic. I mean, he really has not taken an audition that he hasn't won, with good reason. I mean, he's a beautiful cat. He's a wonderful human being. Works his tail off. Really talented. He's just like, go Tom. That's what we all should aspire to. But when you hear him talk about, he had embouchure issues, major embouchure issues, as a grad student, and how he figured it out and made it work, and to where he is now, I'm proud to call him a friend and a colleague, and he's actually one of my first Chopsaver endorsers. So I lose the job. Kind of a tough blow. You're doing something for 3 years that you're kind of hoping will turn into full time, and it doesn't work out. About 2 weeks after the audition, I'm still kind of licking my wounds and figuring out what I'm going to do, which would probably have just been kind of resurrect my freelance career. I really hadn't burned any bridges or anything like that, but there were jobs that I wasn't doing because I was fully committed to the ISO. And I knew I would have to, build some bridges with some people I had been saying no to a lot, but they understood why. An old student of mine, so this is a couple weeks after the audition, Wesley Bullock is his name. Wesley's a dear friend now. He was one of my students at Butler. And we were having a random conversation. He just came over to the house to visit one day. And he starts talking about how he treated a lip injury that he incurred in a marching band accident. Wes was part of, founding member of, he was part of Star of Indiana back in the day.
Oh, right, yeah.
Turned into Brass Theater, and he was a founding member of Blast. He was very involved with Blast. Still consults a lot with drum corps in Japan, and really great guy, a great player, and I was proud to call him a student. But we're just having this conversation about this stuff that he used to treat this lip injury. So he's out there going one direction, and someone in the color guard goes the other direction. Next thing he knows, he's got this horrible bruise on his lips.
Oh boy!
I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I used arnica." And I said, "What's that?"
I was going to say the same thing if you didn't.
Well, exactly. The world falls into two camps: people who know what arnica is, and people who don't. Because
Star Wars character, isn't it?
Arnica, as it turns out, it's an herb. It is the full name of it is Arnica montana, because it's often found growing on mountains. But it's a sunflower derivative. It is a natural anti-inflammatory. Takes down bruising and swelling. Imagine that. For a brass player, that's pretty amazing. But I was struck by a couple of things. First of all, had been playing at this point 25 years, had never heard of this stuff. And he said, well, it's more common in Europe. You'll see guys in England and the UK that have a tube of it in their case. That you can use it as a topical, or you can take it as a pill form. Google was a thing, and then this was May of 2004. So I learned more about arnica, and realized that this was kind of something more people need to know about. And I started thinking about, okay, there's Chapstick, there's Carmex, there's DCT, there's even Burt's Bees, but they all suck. As far, in my opinion, they are petroleum-based, chemically laden products. And if you look at the ingredients in some of these things, why am I putting this on my lips? Why are millions of people putting these products on their lips? There really has to be a better solution to this. And I bet if I could incorporate some arnica, and I quickly learned there are other herbs out there that had really healing agents to them, and anti-inflammatory, reduce pain. That'd be pretty cool for a brass player. Talked to some friends. I said, "Is there a market for this?" And they all said, "Yeah, probably. There's like millions of us out there." So I became, within a couple of days, I had bought my own mixing bowls, and I'm online all the time. I'm consulting with an herbalist. My wife thinks I'm going through midlife crisis. I've taken the kitchen is now like my domain. And I've got this, I wish I could show it to you, but actually it's on the website. There's a picture of me like with all this stuff in front of me in the kitchen.
You look like a mad scientist in that photo. It's awesome.
I was absolutely a mad scientist, obsessed with this idea.
Yeah.
And the first several were pretty god awful. I mean, one of the great miracles of this story is the fact that I kept going with it. Even after I had one that almost nearly burned my lips off. I'll just a little cautionary tale. If you're ever using thyme, THYME, thyme oil, dilute it, cut it just a little bit. Don't.
Hey, Lance, maybe that's what we were drinking with those Chinese army guys
that could be,
with Jeff in Beijing. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, a little recall there.
No, don't ever go full strength with the thyme oil. On paper, it looked great. It was like antiseptic and healing, and I thought that's got to be in my formula. And whoa, this stuff really what was left at the time.
I wish you had videoed all of this.
Yeah. This was, like I said, Google was a thing, but smartphones were not.
Of course.
Before, but I kept at it, and about 2 months later, I had a pretty kick-ass formula, and I was kind of testing on myself. And by this time, my wife was humoring me, and she would try, and she'd go, that feels pretty good, even though she wasn't a brass player. So I finally started giving this stuff to local colleagues and professionals, and I remember I remember standing in the lounge at the ISO. They asked me to play that week, and a woodwind player, flute player, heard what I was talking about. She goes, what is this? And I said, oh, it's just a brass plate thing. She goes, no, it's not. I said, we're just as fussy about our lips as you guys. What is that? Give me some. So she tried it. Everybody who tried this stuff was saying, what is this? My lips have not felt like this in years. I feel like I can play longer. I feel like I'm not nearly as chapped as I usually am. I'm not usually as sore or bent out of shape after a long day. This is amazing stuff. So now I'm hooked, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got this formula. I'm going to be a millionaire in 2 or 3, maybe 4 years tops.
How are you giving it to people at this point? First of all, you sound like a pusher, which is hilarious. But you put it like a little, like how are you getting it out to these? You just go up to them and smack it on their face?
This sounds a lot like Breaking Bad, actually. It's like where you're in your crystal meth RV, and then you're
RV. That's right.
Except that he did not make his wife try it first. Yeah, that's where your stories diverge.
Yeah. So I was working with things like...
Hey, this is Lance. We'll get you right back to the interview in just a minute. I wanted to, first of all, thank you all for listening. You've been wonderful. We've got hundreds of you that are listening to every episode, and that's just great. It's very rewarding to Andrew and me. And we wanted to let you know that if you're interested in helping us cover the costs associated with recording and uploading and storing these podcasts, there's a quick and easy way for you to do that, and that's through a site called Patreon, Patreon. And at Patreon, if you sign up through that site, you can pick a dollar amount, $1, $3, $5, $10, however much you want. And every time we upload an episode, your account will be deducted for that amount. And you can set an upper limit per month or per year so that if we end up uploading additional content, that you won't be charged more than wherever you set that limit. You also will get access to some free downloads and behind the scenes things that Andrew and I are working on in preparing for future episodes. So if you're interested in helping out, we'd love to have you help you. Thank you very much for listening. Spread the word. Visit pedalnotemedia.com, click on the donate button, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. And now, back to your regularly scheduled podcast, already in progress.
Your stories diverge.
Yeah. So I was working with things like shea butter, mango butter, vitamin E, aloe. These are all things that are still currently in the formula. Arnica, of course. I found other herbs, things like calendula and comfrey and white willow, which is where aspirin comes from. It's the exact same chemical makeup as aspirin. White willow bark is where aspirin actually did come from. So it's got all this amazing stuff in it. But it was kind of soft and creamy, and that's sort of how I envisioned it being on the market, being like in a little squeeze tube or in a jar. Mm-hmm. So now at this point, and so I'm like going to Target and buying little jars and I'm like a baker. I've got this stuff, and I just squeeze it into the tubes, into the little jars, and I'm handing it out to people. Um, then we realized, okay, I'm not going to do this out of the back of my kitchen and just like a drug dealer would.
Not if you want to stay married.
It's okay, man. We're not judging.
Yeah, no judgment here. But I found I'm now that people like it so much, I'm looking for a manufacturer. I'm in business. I've got a name for it. We had, here I'll show you this. Even though your listeners won't. This is my wife framed this. I don't know if you can see it, but these are all some of the names that we were going to call it at one point.
Awesome.
And we kept coming back to Chopsaver, but my dear mother-in-law was never quite sold on it. So in fact, I remember we were driving back from Florida on a family vacation, and we're talking about this product that I'm obsessed with. And she's starting to write down. So this is her writing. She's starting to write down all the different words we might use to describe this product. Paralips, Chop Care, Just Lips, Lip Sensor, Pucker Upper, Lip Inks, Lip.
Oh wait.
Pucker Upper.
How'd you miss that one?
I know. Lip Sync, Lips Alive, Chops Alive, Lips Anew, New Lips, Lip Man, Lip Doctor, Dr. Lips, Lip Fix, Lip Fixer, Lemon Lips, because I was using citrus oils to make it smell kind of appeal to both men and women, kind of gender neutral fragrance. I didn't want it medicine-y, but I didn't want it overly feminine feeling or smelling, so that's why it's got this blend of citrus oils. Lip Aid, Hip Lips, Silk Lips, Lip Support, Chop Aid, Lip Refresh, Fresh Lips, Lip Care, Nutrilips, Lips Touch, Lips Power, Lips Saver, Lips Tuner, Lips Toner, Lip Toner, Nutri.
I'm quite appreciative of the fact that I've never heard my mother-in-law say the words pucker upper. Love you, Mom.
Like I said, what was kind of shocking, and again, Google was a thing back then, that every time you Googled something lips, either it was taken by a major cosmetic firm already, or it took you to a porno site. I mean, it was just amazing how quickly you go from there to there to there. So I thought, okay, I can't use lips in this product, even though it's for lips. But that's not what musicians call their lips. This
was just your cover, right? No, honey. No, I was looking for titles for this. I swear, no.
It was market research, right?
I can recreate my steps for you, sweetie.
I typed in pucker upper, and this is what I got.
But as you can see, I was and still am, of course, obsessed with my mission in this product. I realized maybe this is why I didn't win the audition. Maybe this is my true calling. How could I affect a lot more people? Yeah, I bring a lot of joy and pleasure of the world by playing the trumpet and all that. And maybe there's a different path here. So it has become quite so I've got 2 degrees that say plays trumpet pretty well. There's nothing that says accounting, nothing says marketing, nothing says sales, nothing says how to set up a trade show, nothing says. But I'm just stepping into the abyss. I'm so intrigued by the possibilities that failure is not an option. I didn't even think about that. This is because all my friends love it. Of course, millions of more people love it, but it's taught me that even the best products have to be well marketed, have to have some good timing, have to have all kinds of things fall into place, and enormous amounts of patience to get to this point. And the point we are now is the product is now available in CVS pharmacies across the country, over 7,000. This is a major retail chain who said, yeah, this crazy trumpet player who made this stuff in his kitchen, we think it deserves a shot. Wow. It needs to be right next to Chapstick and Burt's Bees and all the rest. So, whole new world right now. But the intervening 10 plus years from when I had that idea to when I got this formula up and running and found a manufacturer and got the website up and start marketing and going to Midwest and going to TMEA and going all these places trying to figure out how to sample it. Always improving the formula as we could. Finding the right design people, finding the right PR people, finding people that would even be willing to work with me, a guy who wasn't making a lot of money yet, and didn't have huge financial backing. Actually, still don't. But here we are. We're kind of competing in this. People may not know Burt's Bees is owned by Clorox. I believe Chapstick is owned. I'm pretty sure it's Pfizer. If you go up the chain of all the, the different companies that are involved. So I'm competing with multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Wow.
But CBS, bless their hearts, has said, we're going to give you that platform and hope it works out for you and us, because it's a kind of a pain for them if they take on a new product and it doesn't go well. That's not good for them either. But they also don't want to be caught short when something hot and new hits the market and it catches fire, which is what we believe will happen. Because at the end of the day, it's a product for anybody, not just musicians. So it's what we told CBS is two things. There are more musicians out there than you realize. We can dominate that market, we believe, and do very well. But we, of course, want everyone to use it. And where we get that other people validation was about 5 years into this. I got an email from a dermatologist, again, quite out of the blue, but a musician had showed her lip balm, her Chopsaver, to her doctor. And you may know or may not know, but a common way to treat severe acne is a drug known as Accutane. Accutane has been in the market for several decades. Actually, Accutane is a brand name. The class of drug is isotretinoin. But it clears up the acne, but in doing so, it clears up like every oil and moisture producing gland in your body. It just completely dries you out, which is how it attacks the acne. But it creates severely chapped lips. I mean, people's lips are wrecked. They're bleeding. They're painfully dry. So they're always looking for a really good lip balm and not always able to find one. So this doctor said, I was amazed how well your product worked for my patient. Would you send me some samples? So now I'm like, this stuff that I made in my kitchen and now is being requested, prescribed, recommended, whatever you want to say, by medical doctors. That was pretty amazing. And so we did what we could over the next couple of years to start marketing to medical professionals, specifically dermatologists, for that reason. But there are lots of other drugs that have really dry lips as a side effect. So we have heard from cancer patients. We've heard from rheumatoid arthritis patients. We've heard from all kinds of people with either the disease itself or the treatment of the disease causes lip discomfort, and they love Chopsaver because of it.
Wow. This is reminding me, that last part is reminding me of the Sam and Pat, the breathing gym, about how they had originally imagined the product for brass players, and then it turned out that they, at Dr. Tim Lotzniser's recommendation, put a little box on the front that said for winds, brass and orchestral winds, and then that it's since branched off that that the breathing gym is used by some major Division I football teams in college, and that they've started to be used with some asthma patients at some hospitals, and that you don't that when you start with a good idea, that to never rule out who might benefit from it, because you, just like I would be thinking, you're like, well, this is for me and my trumpet buddies, and lo and behold, wow, what a fascinating story.
I know, there's 1,000 directions we could go.
There is.
What kept you going for 10 years? Was there just like enough progress that it sort of kept you going, or you just knew no matter what, I'm just going to stick it out until it succeeds?
It was kind of that. It was, I would say to anybody, musician or otherwise, who goes into some sort of crazy entrepreneurial thing. My big idea was, I have created a much better chapstick. It's almost like saying, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna make a better Coke. I'm gonna make a better Band-Aid."
On the surface, that is a pretty stupid idea, Dan.
Yes.
It just is. It's like,
why would you even do that?
Because you're crazy.
because you're crazy and because you actually think you did it.
Amen.
And the people that have tried it say, this, there is that aspect of this product. People don't expect it to work as well as it does. There's a skepticism out there. There's like, and I've seen it thousands of times, albeit a marching band competition or even a medical convention, doesn't matter. I give it to someone and they put it on, they kind of like, wow. I mean, they immediately feel the difference. They immediately feel better. They immediately say, I've never felt anything like this. This truly doesn't feel like anything else on the market. So there's that. And you think, well, if I were to give up on this, I would be keeping this from the world, which I don't think I should do. I would also be giving up on myself. And there does come a point where it's almost like I'm in the woods now, and the only way through is through. I mean, going back is not an option. Giving up is not an option. There would be some serious, I'll share this with you, there'd be some serious personal financial ramifications if this doesn't really hit big. So yeah, there's that. But you're right, there would always be, and I would get an email from an isotretinoin user or a cancer patient or a young musician or even a professional musician would say, playing is more fun. A comeback player would say, my lips never felt like this before. It's really helped me play. It's helped me enjoy my instrument more. It's helped me practice longer. So that's kind of what keeps you going. Those times when you feel like quitting, you're like, yeah, but what if I don't quit? What if I just figure out a way to keep going? And there is that aspect to this. It's a little different than practicing in your practice room and getting better on that excerpt or that solo or that etude. This has gotten much bigger than that. But I would say my musical training has set me up well for this kind of thing, because when you're a musician, there are long, lonely hours. There should be long, lonely hours in the practice room where only you know what's happening. And I have long, lonely hours in this little office where only I know if I send this email to this person, I might get an answer. If I put out this next email blast, I might get a few more customers. If I find a way to get to that medical convention next month, I'll be able to talk to some more doctors and get some more endorsers. And maybe that'll be the thing that finally gets CVS or some Walgreens to say yes. So the network has always been building. The people around me have always believed in it. I do have tremendous family. My wife is a saint. Lance, you met her yesterday. A lucky guy. She's put up with a lot. Here's a guy that she fell in love with, this dashing young trumpet player, and was doing
That's
that.
how all trumpet players see themselves. Right?
Wait, she fell in love with Tom Houchin?
Yeah.
Sorry, too soon?
There you go.
No. Oh, but Tom is so cute. How can you compete with that? He's just adorable in every way. And he wouldn't mind me saying that. So, we're doing the thing about this from her perspective. We're doing the same kinds of thing. We're doing the same jobs. We love it. We can gripe about the same people on the way home in the car. And then I'm not doing those jobs as much. I'm saying no because I've got to be at a trade show. I've got to be focused on this business. And so it's been this kind of slow progress of where one day she woke up and she goes, "You're not really doing what I used to do anymore, are you?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I still play, and I still occasionally play in professional situations, but it's getting harder and harder to do that because I don't want to pretend to my colleagues, my playing colleagues, that I'm keeping my chops up, no pun intended, the way I used to. I just can't. And focus on this business the way it used to. When CBS says, yes, you're in, you need to produce. You've got to figure out every way you can to get people to go to CVS and buy some Chopsaver. And so if that means I'm not practicing as much, or I'm saying no to that recording session, or I'm saying no to a week with the ISO, because that's a week taken away from what's turned into a potentially multi-million-dollar business, I've got to make hard choices. But in the moment, I'm saying no to $1,000 of work. Yeah, I could use $1,000. Who couldn't? But those have been some tough decisions. Those have been some tough choices about, putting off short-term gain for a long-term, what could be a huge thing. And now, I have some investors, I have some friends and family involved in this, and I think they'd be disappointed too if I just said, can't take it anymore. It's too hard. I can't do this. It's too hard. I mean, so again, back to how did being a musician sort of help me with this? Well, there's just the discipline. There's the working at something just to get incremental improvement, which is what great musicians understand is important. And I think a lot of students don't understand that. Incremental, small, little, tiny bits of improvement over the course of several days or weeks or months is how you get there. And that's how I've looked at my business. I can look back and say, well, yeah, this hasn't happened yet, or I haven't been purchased by Burt's Bees yet, or I had some of these things I thought would happen more quickly. But the underlying, is the product better? Yes. Is the marketing better? Yes. Do I have doctors involved with this? Yes. Do I have a major retailer now finally saying yes to it? Yes, I do. And those all, if I'd given up at any one of those days when I thought about giving up, I wouldn't be here now. So it's, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, sorry to cut you off. Speaking of the of giving up, well, one of my favorite parts of your story, there's like 9 favorite parts. Fascinating. But what I love is the fact that you were in your early 40s, that you were doing so well on the job with the Indianapolis Symphony that you had been hired for 3 consecutive one-year positions, and that you went to the trouble of going to Don Green and of going to all the way to Chicago to get lessons. And I mean, you were as proactive as you possibly could, recognizing that taking auditions is a muscle and you hadn't used it in over a decade. And I mean, you did everything that you possibly could do. And then Tom Houchin, the devilishly handsome Tom Houchin, showed up, and I think it would be a pretty understandable human reaction to be very bitter about that. And I'm not saying that you smiled and high-fived him and said, "This is great news." I'm sure that's not what happened. And yet, it doesn't sound like you spent very long at all feeling sorry for yourself, and you just so you just persevered like you're doing now with the business. But the fact that you went with a plan B right away that you didn't even know was a potential plan, and then that kind of dovetails with the fact that you get this, as I've already joked, stupid idea, another chapstick. And then the best part about that is that 2 days later that you're surrounded by a bunch of ingredients, half of which you'd never even heard of before. Like, that's awesome. This is, I'm going to, you haven't accepted yet, but I'm going to interview you for the Entrepreneurial Musician, because this podcast alone could be an episode, and we'll wait a while. But I mean, this is exactly it. I mean, when you have an idea and you have a passion for it, then you got to make it happen. And one of the people I just interviewed, who actually it hasn't even come out, by the time this comes out, it will have come out, John Kellogg, who teaches at Berkeley, and wrote the very famous book to Take Care of Your Music Business. He talks about powerful product. He's got 3 Ps, and the first one is powerful product. And similar to what you were talking about at the beginning with when you're a musician, you got to be great at playing, but you also have to do all those other things. But if Chopsaver wasn't an incredible product, then you could be a marketing whiz. You could have all sorts of financial backers, like you said, and family and this and that, and you could be a marketing whiz and great at accounting and all that stuff. And there's no way that CVS is ever going to dream. They don't do things as a favor to people.
Right.
I mean, they're just it's not like even if I'm friends with the CEO, I can't just come up with a new toothpaste and he or she, I don't know who it is not going to say, "Sure, Andrew, we'll carry that in 7,000 stores." It doesn't work that way. But the fact that you hit the ground running and within 48 hours are doing the Walter White thing there in your kitchen is just it's awesome. Man, I'm pumped up.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. So but to kind of bridge the gap between in my kitchen and CVS.
Yes.
There, I thought, well, obviously I want this to be in CVS someday, but I'm not going to, I've just got this stuff in my kitchen. I found a manufacturer in Cincinnati that could, and so they're the ones actually that convinced me to put it in the stick form, the traditional tube form, and they worked with the formula a little bit, and they came up with a really very, very nice version of my original product, and convinced me that it would be a little quicker to get on the market and cheaper to put it in those tubes.
Can I pause you for just a second?
Sure.
So at this point, now you found this manufacturer. How does that work? You pay them an amount to do this, or did they take some equity in the company, or they brought it on as a thing that they did, or what's the financial exchange there? I know this is getting more into the business side, but I'm so curious.
All those things can happen, but typically it's just you'll find a third-party manufacturer and understand these people make products for other people. They made foot powders, they made creams and lotions. They were a factory that was set up to deal with these kinds of ingredients and make. And in fact, I think they had their own line of lip balm as well. So they were set up to do this kind of thing. They worked with my formula, took the basic ingredients, showed me a prototype of their version of Chopsaver. After several months of that, I said, yes, that's the one I like. And then they said, okay, here's how much it costs to make 10,000 units. And they would make it. They also labeled it, packaged it, and sent me finished product.
Gotcha.
So we agreed on a price, and their minimum order was 10,000 units. So I had to come up with, I think at the time, I don't know, $7,000 to pay for those 10,000 units. Now I've got inventory.
Where is it? Is it in your basement, or is it like? I mean, every musician that I know that's made a CD, they've got a basement full of CDs. So where's all the Chopsaver live?
We have stored well, right now it is stored in a warehouse facility that also does my mailing and fulfilling and shipping it out. But it has been stored in a bedroom. It's been stored in my mother-in-law's basement at various times. But sealed up in boxes. There's never been a problem there. But you do have to figure out, where do I put all this stuff? And so, whereas people that are creating new apps and digital products that are just all internet-based, God love them. They don't have to worry about buying inventory and shipping inventory and selling inventory. But there are still, and I have this conversation with investors. It's like, you guys are looking for the next great app or the next great Facebook or the next great Google, but people still love consumer products. People still rub on their bodies to feel better. Whether it's a woman buying lotions or a guy has chapped lips because he works outdoors or whatever, it's a constant thing. And that's never going to go away. So there's a certain timeless quality to this product that appeals to me. But so back to so that's how it worked with the manufacturer. Mm-hmm. I gave them my design work. They plugged it into their template. It's off and running. And I thought, well, I'm going to sell this in music stores. This is made for musicians. It's perfect. Every music store in the country ought to carry this stuff. And I was shocked that not every music store in the world agreed with me. To be a lot of them, their reaction was, well, this is like $5 chapstick. People can buy chapstick already. Why would they want this? So again, I had to kind of convince them that it is so much better. It is so much more therapeutic. It was created for every kid that walks in your store, marching band or professional or beginner or otherwise. And so they finally started getting it. I would say, how things evolve for a reason, and the people that you meet at any given time are often sort of put in your path for a reason. Page's Music, the major music store here in Indiana, they understood it. They thought it was cool. If Page's Music had been one of those non-believing stores that I talked to, this may have gotten derailed early on. I may have thought, God, I can't even sell it to the people I thought I designed it for. But Page's said, this is cool, we'll take it. And then they even did, I clearly remember meetings with them, Dan, this is an invoice. This is a purchase order. What we will give you is a purchase order. I mean, it is business 101. I mean, and earlier, and they were so, patient and kind to me, just like, yeah, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, but they're gonna kind of teach me. And I've always been able to find those kinds of people, whether it's my first store at Page's telling me what an invoice is, or the guys that I met in Chicago that were very adept and knew how to sell to Walgreens and CVS. and have been working with them for a couple of years. And finally, there's no secret in the sense that it's just good old salesmanship, and that you show up as often as you can to your prospect, and you finally give them a compelling motivation to take a product. So when we fast forward, so I'm going to NAMM, I'm going to Midwest, I'm going to TMEA, I'm going to music band events, band competitions. We're sampling it, we're talking about it, we're selling it, and more.
You got a mascot. You have Choppy.
We have Choppy. Now I have to say Choppy unfortunately has been retired because Choppy doesn't look like Chopsaver anymore.
Yeah. I was doing all these bandrecord.com marching band shows. I never got to interview Choppy once. I was surprised. Pat, there's some great, if you go to bandrecord.com and click through the videos on the marching channel, you can see some great interviews between Pat Sheridan, Sam Palafian, and a life-size tube, a human-sized tube of Chopsaver. So yeah.
Yeah,
it doesn't speak, which is a pretty fun challenge for the boys.
Yeah, it was
the challenge.
I should tweet that one out again. That was pretty classic.
Hey, man, send me the suit. I'll go stand in front of the CVS here in Centerville as a thank you for doing the podcast.
That would be awesome. But like I said, we've changed the packaging a few times, and so the Choppy mascot doesn't really look like the Chopsaver you see in the stores now. But we already have our history. I mean, you're doing this for 10 years. You already have kind of like a company timeline and history, and Choppy has already come and gone. But we may resurrect him at some point. I don't know. So music stores, got a couple music stores, get a couple hundred, get about 1,000 of them, some overseas distribution. But that's when we kind of, for the last several years, we were just like this. And that's when I realized that, okay, there's not going to be this just natural, organic next step, like from Guitar Center and Sam Ash and all the other music stores to Walgreens. There's just a big gap there. I love the music world. It's where I'm from. But when you see the difference between there's 7,000 music stores in this country, maybe more. The largest chain is Guitar Center, drums and guitars and a few wind instruments. 300 stores maybe. Sam Ash has 50 stores. Walgreens is about to acquire Rite Aid.
Oh my gosh!
Really?
Yes. So this time next year, they will probably be 12,000 stores.
Wow.
CVS. Nearly 8,000 stores. Kroger's 3,000 stores. Target is. You just see the scale of when you get a product like this into those kind of retailers. It's just a completely different world. And I had to figure out, how do I bridge the gap between what's essentially a niche, mom and pop music distribution type product into major retailers. So that's a couple years ago. I just kind of did some more networking locally. Found these people in Chicago that specialize in taking oddball little products like mine and getting them appointments with CVS. And to get into CVS, you've got to get the appointments, you've got to get the meetings. They were very good at that. Redid the design work, found a new design team here in Indianapolis to completely rework the brand. And I would say something interesting we did. There's been 3 iterations of the packaging, and the first one had like a little musical note on the word Chopsaver, and it was clearly designed for musicians. Then when we started getting doctors recommending it, we thought, okay, we want to see this in a Walgreens or a CVS. We took all that away, and we just said Chopsaver, and it had some text on there. We thought it would be more middle of the road, appeal to everybody, but what we ended up doing, unfortunately, was it appealed to nobody. We kind of stripped the soul out of the brand. And it wasn't until a couple things. I was standing at a medical convention with my wife, and I was, no pun intended, I was downplaying the fact that I was a trumpet player. I was trying to be medical.
That's smart.
It's the first time in history.
Yeah.
This is for your patients, and it's for isotretinoin. And then she said, Dan, you're a trumpet player. That should be the first thing you say to these people. I said, no, just try it. So I'm a professional trumpet player. Now I'm in a medical convention. I'm there with Johnson & Johnson with their $1 million booth over here, and Nivea and Neutrogena with their $2 million booth not booth. We're talking, it's like they took the entire cosmetics department of the Manhattan Macy's and plopped it down in the middle of a convention center. And I've got my little 10 by 10 Chopsaver booth. But she said, "Tell me you're a trumpet player." So I started using that as my opening pitch to people, and people just stopped. What? What did you say? And then it turned into, "Oh, I used to play," or "My son plays," or "My dad used to play in a Dixieland band." What is that? "Oh, my Accutane patients would love this," and yeah, that's why we're here. Boom. That's kind of how the conversation went. And so when it came time when we pitched to CVS a few times, the buyer, bless her heart, she finally said, "You have a great product. It's obvious. You've got a passionate following," and I'm pretty sure she had a little bit of a musical background as well, which helped. So she kind of understood what we were doing, but she said, "Your packaging sucks." She didn't say it sucks. She just said, "You're telling me all these great things about your product, but I don't see it in the packaging." And you've got 3 seconds when someone walks by your product on the aisle to grab their attention. So we literally went back to the drawing board and came up with the design that you see now, which clearly has a trumpet player on the package, clearly says what it is, musician invented, dermatologist recommended. The arnica is very prominent on there now, all things we weren't doing for who knows why. You do things at the time you think are good, and then you realize that was a mistake, time to correct. So we corrected, went back with this design, and she said, "Oh, that is infinitely better." Yeah, I'm not a mathematician, but I think infinite's good. I think infinite is big. I think that's
the money it is.
That's a polite way of saying this is good, and what you had before was really not good.
It's pretty much. But it was like little tweaks like that, just like when I was working on the formula, or when I was working on just how to run a business and how to own a business and how to keep books and all that stuff. You just get a little better each day. You get a little better each day. You make some improvements. We made a pretty big improvement, and she agreed. And that was a big part of why she finally said, "Yeah, I'm going to give this a shot. I think this is cool."
Wow. Well, there's a whole lot. We're out of time. There's a whole lot of questions that I still want to ask you. So you're definitely on the hook for a TEM interview.
Absolutely.
This is we probably can guess what you're going to say to him, but our dear friends Jens Lindemann, as you have probably heard, is and you barely know him, which is going to make this awkward and awesome. Which is really the only 2 things we're going for, right, Lance?
That should have been our stage name.
Awkward and who's awkward and who's awesome?
Oh, I'm awkward.
Oh yeah, there you go. So, and you know who's awesome? Tom Houchin. All right,
that's right.
There you go. So, do you have any advice for Jens dealing with his job problems, or do you want to just yell at him for not using your product in the first place? Because that would be funny.
Well, let's put it this way: if he's having chop problems and he has used Chopsaver, don't tell anyone.
There is. He's already got the cease and desist letter, like it's ready to go. He literally has to click send, and then there you go. That's funny. There we go. What a fascinating story. I've said fascinating 5 times in this interview, which is probably getting irritating, but it's the truth. It's a
fascinating statistic.
That is a fascinating. It's fascinating that I can count that high. So, Lance and I love doubling down on stupid. So, and someone is someone's waving. So,
that was Noel.
The saint I told you about? That's my wife.
Oh, I see. I thought all of a sudden a saint appeared over his right shoulder. Yes, exactly. So, it was great too.
How
do we find you online, man?
Chopsaver.com. We're more and more active on, of course, Chopsaver. We have a Facebook page. If you want quick social media type interaction, I'm Chopsaver Guy on Twitter. You can also follow the company just at Chopsaver. I would love it if people would just, if you haven't tried it, you can actually order a free sample online through our website. Go into a CVS and pick one up. If you don't like it, tell me and I'll send you your money back. But that rarely happens. That's really the way people can help us the most right now. And if you're already a fan of it, tell your friends. tweet about it, put it on Facebook. We actually have a hashtag Save My Chops, where we're encouraging people to post their picture with it and Save My Chops. And every now and then we'll say, "Oh, that one's pretty funny. Let's send them some free Chopsaver." So it's not really a contest, but it's the hashtag that we thought sort of applied to the
And
product.
if we want to see one of those videos of you doing the drive-by parking lot concerts at CVS across the nation, is that on YouTube or at the Facebook or all of the channels? Yeah, okay.
Those are most easily found on the Chopsaver, on YouTube/Chopsaver.
How many of those did you do?
So we had to get permission, of course. We couldn't just show up at a CVS and start filming.
We've tried that before.
Never works. Never works. But we again, my design guys are geniuses, and they said, we've got a kind of a cool storyboard idea. We just want you in front of a CVS playing. We'll do it at dawn. It's a new day at CVS, and so I said, okay. So we gave them this very loose script, and it was intentional. They said, when we shoot something, we don't want it to be so scripted that we can't take advantage of something magical that happens in the moment. So we kind of count on something cool happening. So we got permission from them. We got this beautiful, beautiful day. It was in September, and we got there like 5 a.m. So we would have different lighting to work with. And they said, okay, get out of your car and lock the car and start playing and look around and then run away. And so I did that for a while. And then it was, why don't you play something else? And then now it's getting light and people are showing up. The manager shows up, and so we're filming, and she's like opening the door to the CVS. We got her on camera. Then we're all like, "What's that noise?" There's this CVS truck is making a delivery, and it's like the guy shooting, the camera guy and the other guys were excited because the truck. Get in front of the truck. I mean, it was perfect. So we had to start filming. We just turn on the okay, now do it this way. I'm playing. And we captured these 4 really kind of cool, short, perfect for social media videos that say CVS, trumpet player product, Chopsaver, go check it out. So we're going to be able to use those for quite some time because
that's great.
That's awesome.
They're very clever. They're very creative. So there's our YouTube channel, chopsaver.com. Follow me on Twitter. Go to CVS and buy. And that's not to say don't go to your favorite music store and purchase it there where maybe you purchased it in the past. But CVS is obviously, success in CVS is hugely important to us right now because everything else will kind of flow from there. So I thank you guys for allowing me the time to blab on and on and on about my favorite subject.
It's been fascinating. This has been really, to borrow Andrew's word, It has been. It's just so interesting.
Hey, man,
story.
I own that word in this space. Come on, man. Yeah, back up. There's a lot of other words.
Of you.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Cutler. All right. Man, I am pumped up. This is awesome. What a great lesson for all of us. And this goes without saying, but even for those of us in the audience who are never going to dream of producing a mass distributed consumer goods product, there's so many lessons in this story. About this. I mean, just so many lessons that can be applied to anything from simply freelancing as a player to digital content creation, as he talked about, to just about anything. So, man, Dan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And
thank you, guys. Really
thanks, Dan.
Yeah, that will do it for another episode of The Brass Junkies.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Austin Boyer and Buddy Deschler of the Fredericksburg Brass Institute. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.